What's up, everyone? I'm GKB, aka The Governor. I'm also joined today by my co host of the Console Corner and the First Lady of Xbox and the #1 community supporter, She-Wolf. Today on Gamers Knows Best, we will be having a great discussion and review of this little game called Lost Sea. Is this game worth your time and money? Let's get into the video and find out. Lost Sea is an action-adventure game where you explore different islands filled with traps and adventures in the Bermuda Triangle. You select a hero and set off on your adventure, finding other survivors that you can add to your team to help you on your journey. You can treasure hunt each island, finding tablets to help unlock more islands to explore and hopefully find your way home. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into our first category for our discussion/review, and that's the eye candy. What do we think of the art style and overall graphic fidelity of Lost Sea? What did you think about the graphics there, She-Wolf?
When it comes to the graphics, I have to say, it's fun, it's vibrant, the colors all match in well, even the textures, whether it's the water you're looking at, or even the rocks, the trees, it's fun. It reminds me a lot of Banjo-Kazooie and even Spyro in those game-style senses, and just the fun bubbliness that the colors bring to the game itself.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. Like, I really enjoy the colors. It's very bright, colorful. It is cell shaded, and to some gamers that's either hit or miss. Some people really like it, some people really don't. I like the simple design as well. Like, everything is to the point where it's needed, it's not overdone. I like that simple aspect to it. I think the maps look really cool too. Like, you can see each island, the water. They got a little bit of animation and stuff on them. It's kind of cool. Your characters are also kind of cartoony, not like super realistic or anything like that. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about the the cell shaded characters and stuff like that.
Well, I can definitely agree. I was actually going to bring up the fact of the characters. The women have wide hips, and the men are like bushy and stuff like that. But it keeps
Bushy.
it fun. They look like adults, but they're fun. They're fun to play, and it goes with the creatures as well. Whether it's the plant ones or even when you're in the desert, because the maps do definitely bring different variety of feel as well, whether you're in the sandy desert or whether you're in the forest or the jungle. Sorry if I may correct myself. When you're in the jungle, you get that feeling like that's where you are, and these creatures and enemies that they provided in this definitely give you that feel that that's where you are, whether you're fighting a big plant or fighting a skull looking elephant.
Yeah, like, I agree. One of my things, and we'll get this towards the end, and like the pros and cons and stuff like that, is you have different worlds that you go to, and the map kind of looks almost the same, just kind of a new skin. So there's not a whole lot of variety, as far as, like, I guess, the different areas you can go and such like that. We'll touch on this a little bit later, but one of my worries is going into these other levels is, like, it's kind of almost a reskin in a sense. So yeah.
Well, with that being said, though, it is an indie game. It is one of those style of games that do repeat itself, kind of like Spyro, or you even have different Mario games and stuff like that kind of do repetitive maps and stuff like that. So
I mean, I agree, but I think we're past, like, the whole 8-bit 16-bit era, where I still think they could have added a bit more variety. You're right, to be fair, it is an indie game. They don't have the biggest budgets and everything like that, so we'll take that with a grain of salt, and we'll talk about that later. So anything else you want to talk about the graphics before we go to move on?
Well, actually, speaking about the graphics and the maps, I have to say, every time you go into like a different island, the maps did change, where to the point you were either running through lava, which you could see the details and stuff in the rocks, and that's what I mean by the textures. I would like to talk just a little bit of the texture and detail that they did put into this, where even in the jungle there was actually a plane that you could see the metal was rusting and stuff on it. Even though this is a fun and enjoyable game, you can still sense that it still has some reality textures to some of the things that they have, whether they're the plants, the rocks, or like I said, the metal from the plane. And I have to give them credit for doing that style.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like that's kind of what I was like alluding to earlier. Is it's kind of like it's got this cartoony feel to it. Like you're almost like running around these like crazy cool environments. I don't know. For me, it was okay. The graphics.
Well, it's one of those fun games. You have to kind of, I guess, like
Yeah.
those kind of cutesy fun.
Let's get into our next category, and that is gameplay. This is the most important category if you are a gamer. If the gameplay sucks, you simply just won't have fun playing it. So how did we feel about the gameplay and the mechanics overall? For me, I thought, the gameplay is very simple. Like, you're moving a character from point A to point B. You're searching around these islands, picking up tablets, bringing them back to the dock so you can progress to the next island. You do have, like a machete type thing where you can cut stuff in kind of like your weapon. They do add other pickup weapons like the gun, the bomb, stuff like that if you have like a guy who can pick lock stuff or you're lucky enough to find it in some of the barrels or something like that. But other than that, really, there's not a whole lot of other like gameplay that you can do. You have other characters that you can bring on your journey that have other skill sets that add to yours, where you can build like bridges and stuff like that, which is kind of neat. It's kind of like a puzzle solving thing too. What did you think?
When it comes to the gameplay, I'm not a huge fan of the camera angles. I don't like where you can only see so far in front of you and you can't like kind of zoom down and watch in front of you like a third person view.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a huge fan of the top cameras, and I had to keep turning myself just so I could see if I missed something, because there is like a lot of closed off edges and closed off corners and stuff that you do miss because of high pillars or high trees or anything like that. So I did have some issues when it came with the camera angles, but other than that, the gameplay is pretty simple. Like you said, it's from point A to point B. You need to collect treasures. You have to open chests. You have to cut down whether it's trees or whatever. And even the monsters and their game mechanics are, they're the same. They run at you, they ram you, and that's it. Or they just walk around kind of carelessly until they get close to you. The only one that really had a little bit of differency to it was, for instance, in the jungle, the frog, jumped up in the air and then slammed down. But
yeah, I was gonna talk about that too. Like the frog is like an interesting one, where he's kind of like trying to jump on you. The other part that I thought was really good mechanics and added a little bit of variety was like the boss fights. When you get to the first one, he's shooting like all this cannons down on you. Then he kind of jumps on the map and you have a chance to hit him, but there's also other enemies on there trying to shoot and stop you. So that was kind of fun. I really, as I was going through each of the little islands, it's kind of just getting a little repetitive. Where I'm just searching this island, finding this tablet, killing said enemy. But then when I got to the boss, though, I thought that was a lot of fun because it changed up the gameplay. So I wish there was maybe like a mini boss before you get to the boss to, break up that monotony a little bit.
Well, they kind of have something along that lines. Sometimes there would be one of your crewmen would actually turn into like this blue guy, and he would actually like chase you down, and his hits, like if you didn't kill him, he pretty much killed you within like 2 hits. And I got him so many times. It was
I never had that happen
horrible.
to me.
Really? I got him like 3 or 4 times. It's actually a crew member. This was actually one of the game mechanics that I really did enjoy was, I went up to talk to this crew member and it would turn into this blue fish looking monster, and he came charging at me, and his damage was like, it was strong.
That's really interesting.
That is one thing I have to say about I do have some issues with is it almost seems like the characters seem to have different abilities but doesn't actually officially say. So I don't know along that lines, because that kind of goes with the whole boss fight as well, how you go into it thinking that you have to kill him, but he has no health bar, and you just kind of keep going and surviving, which I understand the surviving aspect of it, but at the same time, you actually don't go into it knowing how long it's going to last or how short it is, because there is no health bar with him. And I think that's just a little confusing.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of the one that, like, I remember when we got to the boss and I was like, there's no health bar, and it was kind of a little wonky. And I didn't like too that, like, you spent this time like upgrading your character, which, we'll talk about that in a second. And you can get more crew members, but then they disappear when you're fighting the boss, which I found kind of odd. Like, they really only help you on the little minor islands and stuff too. But yeah, this game has a lot of like upgrades you can get for either your ship or your character. And for the ship stuff, it's more like unlocking, like, you can see treasures and stuff on the island, so you can kind of like pinpoint which island you really want to go to find this treasure or that treasure. And the character upgrade is more of you can do this movement, you can dash, all this kind of stuff. What I did like, though, and made the game a little bit tougher, is your health, and how you had to find these trees, and that was the only way that you can heal, or find in the little treasure boxes and stuff, like the hearts or something like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That was one of my biggest concerns about this, is the difficulties. Because when you go to each island, you don't actually get to choose your difficulty. The island itself already has it.
Yeah.
And for me personally, when I was running through, I didn't really find there was any different between the easy level and the hard level.
I agree. It didn't really seem much harder, but correct me if I'm wrong, but all the hard levels were just like bigger in a sense. Maybe had a couple of more enemies, but not really substantially any harder than any other one.
That's what I thought, like, personally, but at the same time, all you have to do is get the tablet, and then you could run back then leave anyways.
Pretty much
so you
bypass the whole thing.
Yeah, so you don't necessarily have to actually beat the world, like the island, to continue.
Mm-hmm.
So I wish they would have made that a little more acceptable, to where you actually had to, say, cover the island to be able to get the tablets, so that it would actually gave me worthwhile to go to one end to the other end, kind of thing.
Yeah, and like one other thing I want to touch before we move on to the story, and I know you didn't like and I didn't like, and that was like there was no save whatsoever. It's like you start the game, you play as long as you can, at least as far as we know. We couldn't find any, and as soon as you exited the game and then tried to start another one, you had to start almost all over again. I found that kind of frustrating, especially when you moved on to these newer areas. You built up these characters to have like teammates and all that stuff, but you leave the game and come back and you pretty much start back from zero again. How did you feel about that?
When it comes to that aspect of it, I love the difficulty where if you died, then yes, you had to restart everything all over again from that whole entire beginning tutorial spot. That was great. I love that about this game, because that gives you a reason to push. Yes, yeah. To not die and push harder and try to actually get farther in spots like that. But for someone, say, like us, who do actually go through all the islands and collect all the gold and all that to build up our characters, I agree with you. When we go to the next one, if you die in the tutorial, then you've lost everything from the previous map. Or not die. If you have to leave your Xbox, and you have to close down your game, or even the power goes out, you've lost everything.
Yeah, that's kind of like a little frustrating. I agree with you. Like I didn't mind, like, when I was playing, if I died, I had to start all over. But I didn't feel like if I was done playing and my character was still alive and I've got a lot of progress, like, why would I have to start all over at that point? It was kind of a little frustrating. And probably would turn a lot of people off, honestly, if they can't save their progress.
Well, definitely, especially if, say, you beat the boss, you went through all the islands, you did take all that effort, and you go to, say, the next warp, I believe is what they call it. You go to the next warp, and, you don't die. You say, got up to go get a drink, and your Xbox shut off. Well, you've lost everything. And that, I think, was one of the worst things that they did in this game, is they didn't incorporate the ability to continue if you did not die.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so we talked about gameplay quite a bit there. Some good stuff, some not so good stuff. But let's go ahead and move on to our next topic. and that is the story. How did we like the story? Did it have a very good story? You're out there, you get shipwrecked from like this storm, you're in the Bermuda Triangle, and the whole purpose of the game is to go through all these islands and find some mates and make your way to a portal, and hopefully you can get back home or get out of the Bermuda Triangle, essentially. That's pretty much it. There's not a whole lot of story. There's a little bit of, a couple of characters you can really talk to. It's not a super story-driven kind of game. It's more an action-adventure, just go hack and slash kind of thing. But yeah.
Which is fine. Personally, I wish there would have just been, say you started on the ship and you actually, you're with your crewmates or whatever, or you're just traveling somewhere, and then you actually see that you get shipwrecked, and, just a little bit of that story, I think, would have pushed this game just a little bit more. It doesn't necessarily need it, so it's not like this is a big letdown for me or anything like that. I went into the game, I started playing the game, and I was okay with that. I just think a little bit of a story would have been just a little nicer.
Yeah, like with other games that when you die it's like permadeath kind of thing. I think it's more impactful if you care about the characters. Really, I didn't care too much about the characters, and I didn't find enough difference from any of the characters. Like, I could have picked any of them and been fine, honestly. So you don't get that attachment with these characters, so which I thought was kind of, they could have done a little bit better, for sure. But
I kind of took it to myself and just made me think of Gilligan's Island or something.
It's kind of got that feel, yeah.
This is what it is. So I kind of made my own story in my head, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of like that. I probably would go as far as to say that was probably some of their inspiration. But yeah, as far as the story, it's meh. That was a great talk, but now on to what you all have been waiting for, and that is the verdict. Do we buy, sell, wait for a sale, or straight flush this turd down the crapper? So like we always do, we do our pros and cons before we get into our verdict, and we're going to go ahead and start with the cons of the game. For me, I'll go ahead and start. I want to start with graphics. I don't think the overall graphics, I like the cell shaded, stuff. I think it's really cool looking. But what I didn't like about it is the lack of variety. I think each world was too similar to the last. I felt like it was a little too copy and paste a new skin on stuff that they've already done. I would like to have seen much more variety. My second con is the story, or lack thereof. Not much of a story, not much to keep you playing and want to continue playing or even replay after you finish the game. My third con is the save feature. How when you progress to a new world, then you want to just go play a new game, come back. You have to start that new world from scratch. You don't keep any of your previous progress, and I found that very frustrating, and will turn off probably a lot of gamers to that. So what was your cons?
When it comes to this, I'd have to say my cons are definitely the save. That was one of my biggest pet peeves, is the fact, something happens that you can't control and you've lost everything you worked for. So that I can definitely agree with. And of course, we forgot to mention that you don't lose your warp. So if you go on to the next zone, you do still get to keep that. And I give them credit for that. But if you don't die, you shouldn't lose everything if your Xbox shuts off. So that's definitely a con for me. And the story, I wish they would have just gave me a little bit more detail on these characters. Just something, even if it was just one of those, those old write-ups that you see in old style games like Nintendo DS games and stuff, where it's even just a bubble with little writing. They could have even just done something like that. They didn't even have to go into a full-size story, and I would have been okay, but they didn't, so that was a little lacklusting.
All right, so now we're going to go ahead and get into the pros. I went ahead and did the cons first, so I'm going to go ahead and let She-Wolf start on the pros on this one. What did you like about the game, She-Wolf?
So starting off for the pros for me, I have to definitely say it was the graphics. I loved how vibrant and I loved the textures that they provided. And I also really liked the maps of the jungle, the icy and the desert. They brought something kind of unique to this game, and I really enjoyed the graphics overall. I also really enjoyed the fact of I felt accomplished when I actually got from point A to point B without dying. So going through each island when I didn't die and I got to the final boss, I felt proud. I achieved something, and that was definitely a pro for me. So, in an overall about this game, it really comes down to the style of game that it is, and the graphics were definitely my major pro.
Cool. So my pros are the number one is the graphics as well. I like the cell shaded look. I'm a big fan of like the Transformer games and stuff that Platinum does. I like the cartoony cell shaded look in this. I thought it worked well. I liked how it looks like a Marvel Ultimate Alliance kind of game, like that top down, go around hack and slash type thing. I enjoyed that. I thought the gameplay mechanics were done well. There's not a lot to them. They're pretty simple, but they still worked, and that's nice. There was no like game breaking bugs or anything like that. I also like the upgrading, so I can upgrade my character, my ship, to add more functionality and find more loot and treasure and stuff, and I thought that was really cool. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into the verdict now. Would you buy? Would you wait for a sale? Would you flush this turd down a toilet? What do you think?
Personally, for the price of $15, I would actually buy it. It is a game that you can constantly play, something you can just sit back and enjoy. Without the save point, yes, that is the one disappointing aspect. But in reality, this game for the price point that it is, I really found it enjoyable, whether it was the creatures or the islands and stuff like that. It was still fun and enjoyable for me. So I would definitely still buy it for the price range that it is.
For me, I thought the game was adequate. I thought it was fun at times. I enjoyed a lot of aspects of it. I cannot, though, say it's a must buy at $15. I'd definitely probably wait for a sale on this one, pick it up cheap, and go ahead and play it then. Well, that's it, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this review / discussion of Lost Sea. If you did, please drop a big friggin' plane on that like button, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and take care of your fellow gamers.